Welcome to the Center Mid Philosopher. This episode is brought to you by Augustus Royale Fashion. Life's not black and white, it's gray, and gray is beautiful. Check out the brand below in the link. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Center Mid Philosopher. We got the Mashy Pea Mob here, a little bit smaller in numbers, but mighty in force. We got, we're missing Caleb and Matt Sandlin, but we got Spencer Schulten here with us as always, and Zach Poston, our producer as well. And so we'll do the heavy lifting for the guys that are out, but got a lot to cover this week, and a lot's been going on. I guess right off the top, let's talk about the Manchester derby. I mean, it's kind of painful to even. I mean, Man U's that was just a bit of an embarrassment. Anybody got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are Ten Hag's time is extremely limited based on that performance. That was one of the worst derby performances I've seen out of Manchester United. In that, I know City's expected to win, but City didn't even get out of second gear,
No.
and they didn't have to do anything to win that game. And they're basically just letting you know you know Bruno just clip balls to Holland for that header. I mean, that is ridiculous that's allowed to happen. That there's no one marking at the back post. That Holland's left completely unmanned, and even with his poor finishing, even he can get his big, Norwegian head on that ball. So yeah, I don't think it's very good for United. They're in shambles. It's not all Ten Hag's fault. They're a problem from top to bottom, and truthfully, I don't see. If I'm a United fan, I don't see any hope that there's a plan or a tactic going forward or a strategy. It's all just papering over cracks. And this place just chews up talent. If you're good and you end up signing at United, you just get chewed up.
Yeah.
Anthony, Mason Mount, all these players that are really good. Even Rashford looks off it this year.
Yep.
He's not firing with any kind of confidence or direction. So yeah, I just think Man United look sloppy and shambolic. Bad performance.
Yeah, I was going to save this for a little bit later, and Zach, I want to hear your Man City angle to this, but one of my questions for the group later was, is Man U really this bad, and why? And so, yes, they are. And who's to blame? Is it Ten Hag? Is it the Glazers? Is it the ghost of Sir Alex Ferguson? So some stats that are just highlight why they are so bad on the field is, they're the second worst in the EPL in giving up goals, after a restart. So if they score, they give up goals within less than 5 minutes after they score. If the other team scores, they give up a goal then too. And so they've had some injury problems. I mean, Luke Shaw, Lissandro Martinez being out is definitely hurt. But at the end of the day, they're just simply not scoring goals. And Spencer, you touched on Rashford. I mean, he's just not what he was last year. And his shot taking is up this season to 4.13 shots per 90 minutes. Last year, he averaged 3.37. But the quality of those shots, though, are not the same. Only 2 of those shots are typically on target. 2 out of 9 are on target. And he had 1.5 shots on goal per game last season. So 46% of his shots were on goal. This year, 21.4% of his shots are on goal. So he's just simply not putting it on. He's not even getting it on frame.
No, and those stats are really good, and they actually add credibility to the stuff that I said that was completely stat free and just a reaction to what I saw. But I also will say 2 things before we move forward. One stat that I do have for you that I thought was astounding is United have now lost more games under this combined Solskjaer, Ten Hag coaching disaster than they lost in the entirety of Sir Alex Ferguson's tenure at United.
Wow.
That is crazy. And also, just side note, I don't think Bruno Fernandez is the right captain for this team.
No, people have been saying that, and who was it? Maybe it was even Roy Keane saying he's
probably was Roy Keane.
Yeah, he's a great player, but he shouldn't be captain. And
correct.
But no, so they used to average 77.9 goals per season under Ferguson, and now they're averaging 61. So I mean, they're about scoring 20 goals shy than they used to. I will say, I mean, I will just say the one positive, and he's not fully there yet, but I do think Hoyland looks promising.
Looked okay.
He's better than I thought he was going to be. I mean, that, he's not doing it yet, but I mean, he could be one glimmer of hope. But again, Spencer, to your point, they just chew up players. I don't want to go too far, but the last thing I'll say, though, I think more of the problem is off the field and in ownership with the Glazers.
Totally agree.
They've just given up, and it's sort of like Malcolm Gladwell, the tipping point, when he talked about how do you solve the crime on the subways, and they figured out you just need to just scrub all the graffiti off. Like, they just have to change the culture. Like, I get the impression that everything's broken, nobody really cares, and I don't know if Sir Radcliffe coming in with the Ineos potential takeover, will that do it? But can they even do it with just 25% ownership? I'm not really sure.
But can you imagine, though, can you imagine what kind of effect that announcement must have on the players and the coaching staff and the training staff, though? Mm-hmm. So if you know that someone's going to come in and basically clean house if they get control of football operations like Ratliff wants to do, I mean, you're thinking in the back of your head as a human, I'm going to lose my job. I'm not safe. You can't perform in that toxic environment. It's just, it's a human fact. So yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. If they're going to do it, they better go ahead and do it swiftly.
Yeah.
Because this purgatory of like who controls what, or it's just a mess. Zach, what do you think? Man City or Man U thoughts?
Well, I don't even think it's a debate anymore. I don't think it was a debate before the Derby. Obviously, Manchester is blue, and I think even the strongest United supporter would have to say that now. I have a stat for you guys that just absolutely blew my mind. Man United has been leading at home for a grand total of 39 minutes all season. I'm going to say that again. Man United, the Manchester United, has led at home for less than a half all season. I read that and I had to double check it because it just doesn't sound right, but it's crazy. And, both of you guys touched upon it. I think it all has to do with the structure of the clubs. Definitely time for a cleaning out, definitely time for a, fresh coat of paint. And I would argue, I might even want to sand that table down a little bit to really get a new start. If I was a young player, I would avoid a transfer to Manchester United like the plague. I really would. I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but at this point in time, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. As far as the game goes, they coasted to I believe it finished a 3-0 victory. I mean, it was, you watch the game, never in doubt. I mean, not even for half a second. And Guardiola, I mean, he looked like prime Maldini out there. I mean, he was cooking. Doku came on for the last 5 minutes and sent everyone for a hot dog and then went home. I mean, it was really just a performance that as a Manchester United supporter, you have to look at yourself and go, all right, it's time for something new, because now it's not even a conversation. They're not even, I would go as far to say, they're not even really rivals. I mean, it's really how the games have been playing out.
So the last time Man U finished above Man City in the table was 2012, which was Sir Alex Ferguson's last year. So, well, anyway, so that's that, and I will, in closing, I will just say the new David Beckham documentary on Netflix. It really kind of pours salt in the wound, because it's, fans are reminded of the glory years that seem like, a lifetime ago at this point.
Yep.
How about El Clasico? Any thoughts on that? I mean, I guess I'll just tee it off with, it's really one word: Bellingham.
Yep.
It's Bellingham's world, and we're just living in it. Spencer, I'd love your thoughts on, like, how would you contextualize or, like, even articulate how well of a start he's having? And again, we joked about this via text. Like, is he the best player of Real Madrid's history? I mean, that's the joke, is that, but his start might rival that of any start that's ever happened in the club.
It's up there. I mean, he's at Dortmund, he played in a 5 role, right? So he was being asked to do a bit more defensively, a bit more distribution. With Madrid, they've obviously pushed him up into like an 8, or more, where he's actually responsible for getting forward and driving and driving towards the goal and actually shooting much more than he had in the past. That type of adaptation, as you know, is really hard to do unless you're a really special player at a top level. That means you're basically just that much better than most people out there at any given moment to be able to transition like that. That's how it's happened. Now, as far as the Classic goes, I know Jude's going to get all the credit, but the substitutions in midfield, I think, set him up for that success. But we can talk about that in a minute.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, we've likened him to Zidane in past episodes, and you just think about, you know, someone that can step into midfield and play any of the roles, you know, going forward, you know, back and forth, kind of holding, distributing. He can really do it all, and I mean, there's no stopping him, right? It's just every week, it's just a clutch goal after clutch goal after clutch goal. Champions League, in the league, it truly is amazing to kind of witness kind of you know, his ascent, and I mean, the sky is the absolute limit for him.
I mean, I think another interesting thing is, like, I can't remember a better British player on the global landscape. I mean, the last one I can remember that was at this peak might be Michael Owen. And you might say, oh, Rooney. No. Rooney never got to this height.
He didn't.
I mean,
he didn't. I think you got to go back to like Gaza.
Yeah.
I'm with you. It's like
Owen, Gaza type, like, we're like, you know, and it's so anyway, I'm all in for it. I'm rooting for him. I'm a huge fan. I hope it keeps going, and hopefully, I mean, you know, I also think, interestingly, one of the smartest thing he ever did was go to La Liga. I mean, that's like saying, I mean, nobody ever got fired for high IBM. You know, it's like you never can really go wrong by going to Real Madrid. However, I do think he's doing better because it's La Liga and not the EPL. Just because the EPL is, frankly, is the EPL that much better? Yes, it is.
It is.
It's a lot more like. So that was, again, we talk a lot about just how, like, career choices and club choices can make or break careers. I mean, him going to Real Madrid at 20, not doing like what Michael Owen did, going a little bit more in the, you know, latter third, you know, final third of his career. You know, he's I guess what I'm saying is he's kind of he's dominating a little bit more than he probably could in the EPL. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. And I think you raised an interesting point, because La Liga no longer has that star power, those Galacticos, where we saw, you know, obviously before that, but before Messi and before Ronaldo, they don't have the top stars anymore. They can't claim that they have it. Now they kind of can. And, you know, La Liga, sort of as a side point, are a little bit at risk of losing some of their quote unquote like market share to Serie A, because in terms of just fan appeal, because on Serie A is great now because any team can beat anyone almost any weekend now, and there's so much of that going on. And La Liga, I think people got a little tired of just the top 2-3 debate every year, but having Jude in there, and that brings all the attention back onto La Liga, and I think it's a good thing. Yeah, for sure,
absolutely. Well, it's funny that the El Clasico had the Rolling Stones angle that Real Madrid were posting Beatles quotes after they won, which was awesome because Mick Jagger.
It was really sad to see Mick Jagger's like stinky face in the stands when they were losing. And him and Ronnie Wood were there in person.
Wood, yeah, that was awesome.
What I think about, if I'm an England international fan, how about Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice for the next 10 years? That's a pretty solid midfield, I'd say.
Solid midfield, absolutely.
Rice is balling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we'll go. I won't talk about him in a little bit. But Spencer, you brought up Serie A. Sure. It's been a week ago now, but the Milan Juventus game, that was pretty. Well, it was awesome. It brought tears to my eyes that you had 4 Americans on the pitch, which was unreal. It's kind of a heartbreaker. Pulisic having to get yanked out in the 40th minute because of that really stupid red card. That stunk, but actually, just unbelievable. Like, it's worth just being like, timeout, pause. Like, we've come a long way. Like, that was unreal. Yeah. I mean, you had two guys on each team starting for not only 2 of the most storied clubs in all of Italy, but in the world. And in that game, like, I feel like we have arrived a little bit. I mean, we're not all the way there, but that's almost all the way there. But I thought the best player of the four was actually Tim Weah. He was the most threatening, and he also kind of, I don't want to say shut down, but he did a pretty good job on Leal, actually. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that game?
I got to be honest. I did not watch that game.
Well, the other thing that was interesting is so Leal, he's fantastic, but
Yeah.
I also think he is he's a little bit just kind of flashy. I hope I'll probably eat my words saying this, but a lot of flash, maybe not as much substance. Like, he scores some, but like, he gets into scoring position a lot. He doesn't convert a lot. I feel like he gets it in the box and just kind of kicks it in the general direction of the goal. Whereas he could, I don't know, I don't think
He's not quite a Dama Traore level of dribble the whole wing and then shoot it into the stands kind of thing. But I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
If I played with him, which obviously will never happen,
Right.
I would be really frustrated by him sometimes because, like, he's the kind of guy that will dribble 50 yards past three players, get in the box, and then back heel it. No look back heel to nobody. Right. That's the complaint about him. But yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic player and a good problem to have.
No, yeah.
He kind of reminds me of I know Zaha was like rumored. It seems like forever to just every major club, and he's that profile player that in a certain system and giving that leeway to kind of be creative, sometimes to a detriment. He obviously can just produce something out of nothing out on any given match, but he kind of gives me some of those vibes. Want to shout out Caleb missing today, but. That Giroud Pulisic connection, before he got yanked, they were cooking, and it's really interesting to see all the Americans kind of where they're at and just where we've gone in the last decade or even the last 5 years. I mean, we're all over the place, and you got to be excited about it as an American soccer fan.
Pulisic had
Absolutely.
a great assist to Giroud yesterday against Napoli. So,
That's right.
I mean, his start at AC Milan has been, I give it a solid A. I mean, it's been more than I could have expected, and I just hope it keeps going. And we've talked a lot about how we were worried that Weah and Musa weren't going to get any playing time, but they are now, and they're never imagined, especially Weah and McKennie playing together at Juventus, and they had some injuries, but they're delivering and they're rising to the challenge.
We got to get Gio some minutes, man. That my next hope is that.
No, there's always someone that's getting screwed, and unfortunately, it's him. And I feel like he's the one that we need. Because if we're gonna really make a move in the next World Cup, like, he's one that I think you need.
Penciled in starter and firing, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
I would argue, and this I can't remember if we've said this. I personally think he has the highest ceiling of an American player, as far as ceiling, potential. It's crazy to say, like, higher than Pulisic, higher than McKennie. I really do think he's the one out of the lot that has the highest ceiling. Got to find him minutes. Got to get him on a squad where he can play regularly in and out and battle some of those, tweaks and what does Pep call them? Niggles, I believe he calls them. So yeah, would love for him to get a move or just break into the team and start getting some consistent time.
Well, and like, in terms of his ability, his athletic ability, like, he's, like, to me, the perfect American player, because he's pretty big. He's almost like a tight end. I mean, he's not that big, but he's decently sized, and he's just kind of,
he's bigger than you think. Yeah.
And he can kind of just he's strong, he's skilled, he's intelligent. Like, he's kind of what I would think of as, like, what does an American player offer to the global game? That he's just an all-around athlete. You can just tell him.
Yep.
Both his parents are big time athletes, and
some Dempsey vibes too. Like, there's a moxie. There's a moxie. There's an attitude. There's you thought that was going to happen. Now let me show you. Yeah. And when you watch him play for the U.S. national team, I mean, it is just, it's clear. It's black and white. You can see it when you're watching on the screen.
Yeah, and I think if we can get him in peak form, him in there with Pulisic, Musa, way. I mean, all the players that we just mentioned, and then you got Balogun, Pepe, and they're floating up top. That could really be a force.
You guys have like a club for him in mind that you think would be a good shout?
That's exactly what I was going to ask next. What would be like your perfect club for him, Spencer?
For me, I mean, look, he can't go obviously down to the Championship or to the Premier League. I don't think England's a good spot for him right now for minutes. So, Serie A would be a great place. Get him on Milan. Get him firing on the wings there. Let's do it. Any Serie A club would be lucky to have him. He would fit in some of the systems in La Liga too. Like Real Sociedad could really use some winger parity there too. So I'm going with La Liga would be good. Serie A first.
Yeah, I mean, I could teams that kind of jump to my mind are like an Atletico Madrid or like an Aston Villa or like a teams that are playing in the highest of. But I don't want him going to somewhere like really like I don't want him going to Chelsea or Liverpool or
we'll just get lost in the shuffle.
Exactly. I don't want no more lost in the shuffle. Like he has to go somewhere where he's a key contributor. They need him, and that's why Spencer, you have a good point. Serie A, like there are opportunities, and it's kind of a level playing field there. Like no one club is like, oh well, you're never going to get a crack on that squad. Like no, I mean pretty much every team is within reach, which is what's cool.
With Atletico, though, I just wonder where he'd actually fit in. One, like in terms of the positioning, with Griezmann occupying a very similar role in there, but also more important than that, I don't think he's going to get along with Mr. Cojones.
No,
I just don't see it happening.
The man.
I think that's. Yeah, no, he's going to go the João Felix route and just ride the bench for the entire time he's there if he pisses him off. So
no, that's right.
We'll see.
That's right. That's a good point.
I had down Leverkusen. I think that would be a good little shout.
There you go.
Basically somewhere where he can be, three like in the top three most prolific players on his team. He kind of has to be the guy. That's kind of how I see it. Brighton, if he could somehow find his way into that team, I could just see him being like the guy, the next younger star to just get, play a year at Brighton and then get rumored just about everywhere. So those are the two that I kind of had penciled in.
Yeah, those would be good.
I like the Leverkusen call, actually, because Xhaka would put him kind of in his place and help him mature a little bit.
Yep.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But I don't think you'd ever get Dortmund selling to a rival like that, though. It'd have to be a crazy circumstance. But,
yeah, you're right.
But the idea works.
All right, I want to jump to Arsenal. Spencer.
Okay. Where do we start?
Yeah, so this Arsenal team seems different. Why?
Yeah. Oh, that's a huge question. Well, the first is that they finally have a stable structure from top to bottom in terms of like the people running the club, the people participating in the direction of the club, and that means ingoing and outgoing first and foremost. So we've gotten rid of these paper over the cracks type players where we look to sign like a high profile player to really fix a problem that isn't there. So you're getting rid of your like Socrates, your Albas, your Lakas, your Mustafis, your Pepes, your Ozils in favor of, academy players and keen signings. You got like Ben White from Brighton. You got Saka coming to the academy. Martinelli was a $5 million fine. Odegaard we got for $30 million. Obviously Rice was a huge splash. We have a team where, just to sum it up, every position, we're at least too deep at that position. There's a strategy on how we want to play, and we're not just, signing whatever's available to line the pockets of an agent or doing favors to maybe a very particular Portuguese agent or some Spanish executives that we might owe a favor to. They're all gone now. So there's a strategy. It's working. It's an implementation of a solid plan and a path forward with the right backing from the Kroenkes. I never thought I would say those words, the right backing from the Kroenkes, and we have it. So that's the first part, I guess, and that's where they're going. The time frame for how they get there, we can get to how quickly that will come with the project.
How much credit does Declan Rice deserve, do you think?
For how they're playing now?
Yeah.
I'll give Declan credit for this. He played a much different role in kind of a grind you out type West Ham team last year, and now we have a much more offensive minded strategy this year. So he came in and his attitude has been a 10 out of 10. He has shown up in every game. He has been our emotional leader. It looks like he's been on the team for a couple of years already, and that's the best compliment I can give him because of what we're asking him to do with the exit of Xhaka. Now, Xhaka was not as good of a player as Rice, and they don't cover necessarily the exact same position. But what's expected from that 6/8 role is really important in the Arsenal squad. You need to get forward. You need to know when to cover, and in this type of playing, you need to know how to link up with the rest of the players on your channel. And Rice has been very, very good at stepping in to replace that Xhaka output. When I think a lot of players on the team who were even there with Granite are not quite adapting as well as Rice has, and he's new to the team. So that's a huge compliment to him.
Yeah.
I kind of, maybe this is over Americanized, but he's just kind of the guy that you want in your foxhole. You know, I just feel like if I'm playing next to him, there's a sense of calmness, a sense of, just an attitude that any given day, any given pitch, like we can beat whoever you put out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then just a couple other things on Arsenal that I had. Eddie Nketiah, he might be the guy. He seemed, and I know he had a hat trick this weekend, and it's easy to cherry pick, someone doing something off that. But I think for the longest time, that was kind of my question mark. Was is he the guy, more or less? And man, he's had some class goals. He's really performed well. And then we've touched upon this on an earlier pod. As we do, guys. So no pats on the back for everybody, but I think we've been pretty spot on some of these things. That goalie controversy is coming if it's not already here. Raya has had good performances, but I don't think he's been totally commanding in that new role. So those are some of the things that I think if they can figure out and button down, I mean, they could finish as high as they can.
Well, and so Zach, you kind of alley-oop that to me, and I'm going to alley-oop it right over to you, Spencer, back on sidebar. I'll just say Martinelli's looked really great too, by the way. I didn't realize he was for $5 million. That's ridiculously good signing. But what do they need to keep doing or stop doing or focus on to keep their foot on the gas pedal to the metal?
You're testing my coaching ability. Okay, so I'm going to start with what do they need to do? I'm going to start and address Zach's comment about is Eddie the guy. One of the things they need to do is sign a proper center forward. Eddie is not the guy. Eddie is a guy who was the guy against very bad Sheffield United, and he will score goals. He does. He's been impressive in that way. He will score goals when he gets the right service. But when he's not getting service, he cannot do the types of things that Arsenal center forwards need to do, namely press and running ragged. He's not the guy for that. I don't know if he's being coached not to, but I wanted to absolutely throttle him against Sevilla when he came on because he stopped running around and we had a lead to protect, right? The second part of that question is this team needs to continue to take advantage of needs to take advantage of the on-field tactical changes that need to happen that they're not doing. If you look at the Chelsea game, for example, that was a gross, rainy, sloggy pitch, Stamford Bridge. It's an away game. We came out far too slow. We tried to play our game in the mud, and they were basically just pushing us wide into the channels, not allowing us to move the ball fast enough. And we didn't make the change fast enough until after halftime. And by that time, we were already down 2-0 without the right kinds of changes. It's those in-game sort of tactical shifts that we need to continue to do because I don't think that we're that good yet. And the same actually with the Spurs game at 2-2. I feel like we could have won that game and we changed our tactics too late to win it. And I feel like they might have walked off the pitch saying, we could have gone and grabbed that. That's, by us being the best, team out of possession in the world, that's great. But teams are just going to sort of be like, fine, just just take the ball and whatever, who cares? We're just going to give you the ball, and then we can't set up our structure. So it's continuing to grow. It's really hard to balance the injuries that we've had as well. Like, we can't count on Partey anymore. He's so critical to how we play at the base of the defense, at the base of the midfield in front of the defense. Without having him in there, everybody has to shift differently. It affects the way Ben White plays. It affects the way Zinchenko plays, and it affects all the connections of both the right and the left, depending on how they invert. So I hope that was a long-winded way of answering. They need to keep going, sign a center forward, and keep securing these people we have to longer-term contracts to preserve their values. Don't let them run their contracts down to a year like we did with certain other players that will not be mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to just kind of piggyback on that. What I had circled in my notes here is you got to get a dog in the center of the park. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't rely on Partey. And then I also had I don't think Eddie is the guy either. I mean, he's like a B, right? He's a B. Yeah. He's a B plus on his day. But is he doing that same thing at the Etihad? Is he doing that same thing at Allianz Arena when we get into the Champions League and things like that? So those are the kind of things that I have penciled in for them to maybe not necessarily take that next step, because I think they're there, but to kind of cement them, that they'll be in that spot and won't be going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, and just to sort of for the listeners who don't watch Arsenal as much as I do, I realize that might have been a lot of explanation given. But to your point, Zach, the reason that Eddie can't be the guy is partially because Jesus can't be the full guy either. He is like the best. He's like if you like made a center forward, he's the best at 9 out of 10 things, right? He gives you every minute of his life when he's out there. His hold up play, his physicality, his passing. He's great in the air. He presses. He just doesn't finish clinically that you need at that level. And that's unfortunately why I think City were, and you'll know better than I will, why City were okay with him leaving, because he doesn't finish with the same consistency that you need to win. And so when you have Eddie not firing and Jesus injured and not putting the ball away, or both, you need someone who's going to step in there and score for us, put the balls in the net.
Yeah, I mean, Thierry Henry was talking about Gabriel and how he was like, I love the player. He's a phenomenal player, but he was like, he's not going to be your 30 goals a year guy.
No.
No. But he's like, to your point, Spencer, he's a phenomenal passer. He's good in the air. I mean, he does do a lot of things really well. He's just different. So
look at the Cruyff turn that he did against Sevilla and put the through ball onto Martinelli.
That pass was sick. Yeah, they did a whole.
That's your center forward. That's crazy.
That was a whole analysis on that. Zach, is it still Man City's title to win, even though they're not in the lead right now? Or what do they need to keep doing or stop doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to kind of pitch it to you guys, okay? If I told you, I don't think they're even. It's 1 or 2 points behind. But if I told you that Spurs and City at this point in the season were even on points or pretty damn close, and you had to bet your 401k and your house and all the things, where are you putting your money? And I think that's kind of all I have to say to answer that question. We're going to get going as the season progresses. We always tend to get better. New players like Doku, immediate impact. I think we are. I mean, as a City fan, I'm not nervous. How about that? Who's
been your favorite player this season thus far? I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to say, as far as the newcomers are the one that's like really just popped, I mean, every time Doku gets on the field, I mean, he just does stuff that you are not used to seeing. You cannot be you can be kind of a casual soccer fan and you can watch for a second and he'll jump off the screen from you. Mm-hmm. Holland, not quite off to the races like he has in last year, but I mean,
seems like he's gaining steam.
Yeah, I think so. So I really think it's just steadying the ship. I think Pep does a good job of kind of keeping everyone level, celebrating the small wins, but kind of keeping in the back of our head, where we want to go. So yeah, I mean, I think we're the favorites. I'm not too concerned. I'm not nervous. It's more or less keep the train moving. Keep this momentum and keep riding it all the way to February, March, or whenever the season ends.
Or whenever your 21-point deduction comes.
Yeah. Or that.
I've been pretty impressed with Alvarez. He's kind of been my guy. So you touched on Tottenham, and Spencer. You have it's painful for you to talk about, but you seem to know the most. Like, why is Tottenham this good?
Well, they have confidence again. They don't have a coach telling them that they're terrible, first and foremost. So the mentality is much, much better. But they're also playing a much more attacking approach. They're not sitting low, and they're not trying to, Conte their way to a win. They're actually using their attacking players. I mean, Son is no longer injured. I think James Maddison has been a revelation. But the mentality of the coach to letting the players play and backing them, positive vibes. I mean, he's turned White Hart Lane into like a disco party every time they have a home game. It's. I hate to say this. I'll admit right now, I seem really stupid from our first pod because I predicted them to finish 10th. This is not the most hateable iteration of Tottenham. They're back to playing kind of a sexy style of ball. It's fun to watch, like as a neutral.
Well, I mean, we're going to later talk about our favorite strikers right now. I mean, and he's not up there, but he's almost up there. His son, I mean, God, he's incredible. Anyway, another team that is really killing it lately is Aston Villa. What's going on with their hot form? So I've done some research on them. They're on an 11-game home winning streak, their best run since the early 1980s. They have victories over Man U, Chelsea twice, Tottenham twice. They are, they have just been kind of Emery seems to have them doing something that they've never done before. Anybody have any impressive thoughts on what's made them different from?
I've got one.
Yeah,
it's definitely John McGinn, the Messi from St. Mirren. That guy, I had no idea that he was that good until I've been watching a little bit with Scotland and watching him on Villa. When I've had the chance, he's fantastic.
Yeah,
he's a fantastic midfielder. I didn't know, but I mean, obviously, Ollie Watkins is fantastic as well. I mean, he might crack, and we can talk about this later. He might crack my starting 11 in the Premier League this year. That's how good I think he's been.
Yep. He's really good.
Yeah, just one quick piece. I think I don't know if this is controversial. I don't think it is, but Unai Emery, I think top 5 manager in the world for as far as like pregame tactics. Like if one game, right? Like setting for one game, you could argue length of the season, injuries, like dealing with players, whatever. But I think setting up a team and having a specific strategy to exploit another team's weakness. I mean, I think he's elite as far as that goes. So they've been a pleasure to watch this season. Always a must watch or a record and watch for later. On any given weekend.
I agree. And the thing about Emery, because he was a coach of Arsenal, obviously, well before rejoining the Premier League. The knock on him was that, just to your point, Zach, that he was really good for a one-off game management where he could set up perfectly to match someone in a knockout round. That's why he's been so successful in Europe. But to see him do it consistently week in, week out in a domestic season means that his coaching has gone to another level too, and it's just a pleasure to watch because he seemed a little all over the place when he was with Arsenal. But then again, he was also learning how to speak English by watching The Sopranos while he was there. So that's probably not the best use of his time either. But yeah, it's a great point.
Changing tact a little bit, just as we're kind of winding down on the EPL, I would be remiss if we didn't mention / pay some respects to Sir Bobby Charlton's passing.
Oh, sure.
That's tough. And again, way before our time. However, for the viewers and listeners, trying to kind of like where does he rank? And again, I'm not saying he's Messi, Maradona, Zidane, but to me, he might be that next tranche, behind the Cruyffs. But he was maybe the best player on the 1966 World Cup, only World Cup winning team for England. Kind of one of the first guys on the bus, sort of, in the history of the game. Where does he rank to you guys as kind of other experts?
Well, for me, he's obviously before my time, but I can say that having followed the game in England almost my whole life, he is up there with the Sir Alex Fergusons in terms of the icons of that game and that '66 World Cup team, but also the way if you hear about all of his former teammates or people that played with him or worked with him, nobody had anything but a beautiful thing to say about him. Like he apparently was just the nicest person, just a pivotal influence in the modern game, and it's a shame that I think there's only one surviving member left from that '66 World Cup team now.
Oh wow, yeah.
Anytime I haven't watched a player play, but I'm super familiar with his name, his legacy. He got knighted, for goodness sake. So, just
fair enough.
It's a shame. Death's door comes knocking to everybody. The reception and kind of the flowers that he's been given in the last week or so or a couple days, however long it's been. He's definitely deserving of every flowers that he's received, and an absolute legend of world football. Absolutely.
I think actually I want to make one more point here if we can before we go. He struggled with dementia, and that dementia was onset from the injuries he received to his head throughout a long playing career. So let's leave this as a shout out to the FA and world football for the mental health of players and taking care of them after they're done playing, because I think there needs to be a spotlight on the connection between head injuries during football and dementia, and Sir Bobby is a good example of why we need to pay attention.
Yeah, good call. Good, nice. So switching gears a little bit to Champions League. It's been pretty epic this month. Anybody got a favorite match of October or one or two? I'm just kind of curious to hear you guys' thoughts.
I can give you one. Mine wasn't the sexiest one, all right, but I thought the Dortmund Newcastle Group F game from last week was really awesome.
Unbelievable.
Because to the subscribers here, I'm a Dortmund fan. I've been watching them for almost my whole life, and this is not your rock and roll Dortmund team that we saw under Klopp, right? When it doesn't work, these guys look really slow. You can look at PSG; they got dismantled. But when they get it right now under this new system, right, Marco Reus is still coming in, 34, 35 years old, and he's still injecting pace into the ball. So, even though they can't be a pressing team under Terzic, they can do all sorts of other stuff, including moving the ball fast enough to score when they're in the final third. I thought it was really gutsy to go to St. James Park. I thought they were going to lose 3-0, and they went in there, and they showed a side of Dortmund that, as a fan, I don't think I've ever seen before, which is defensively stable in the back. You never associate that and Schlotterbeck with anything stable in defense. And I thought they looked really, really good. And so stick a pin in it, because I think that guy Mecha, who we signed from City's Academy, is going to be fantastic. And he needs to be, because we blew our whole bank on him. Otherwise, we'll be more like Ajax and broke and not good if he doesn't come through. But speaking on this, I think because this game, I chose this game because we're in that match day 3 and 4 when people really get ground out, because you end up getting that you play each team home and away during the 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And I think that now with Newcastle having to come to Signal Iduna Park in Dortmund, that game is going to be awesome.
Oh man, yeah, it's gonna be really good. I had down Real Madrid versus Napoli as a favorite.
Yeah.
Bellingham, Vinny Jr., Tchouaméni, Camavinga, just looking like, and those guys are all so young. I mean, it's going to be I don't know, 5, 7, 10 years of.
Oh, if you're a French World Cup fan, 2026, my goodness, that is going to be that midfield is going to be stacked.
Yeah, it really is. What about you, Zach?
So the one I had kind of bookmarked was the PSG Milan game. 3-0 victory for PSG. That's kind of one of the teams, kind of one of the big dogs on here that I feel like we haven't. I don't want to say we haven't given them love. I mean, it's PSG, but that's one of the ones that kind of none of us considered to be, holding the Champions League trophy at the end of the year. And they have a 17 or 18-year-old midfielder named Warren Zaire-Emery who had 2 assists.
Oh yeah.
I mean. Oh yeah. A club of that size and stature to start and kind of have the orchestrator be a 17-year-old Mbappe, and I can go name, but yep, and I just think almost like like we're still here. A kind of feeling from them, like, we're still battling, we're still going to be there at the end of the competition. So that's one I kind of had bookmarked.
Well, what's interesting about them, too, is the whole, are they better without Neymar, Messi? Like, yes, they are. I mean, just sometimes those are great players, but, I mean, they've seemed to be better without. I mean, they still have Mbappe, of course, but, like, it doesn't. I think your point, Zach, is, like, we're kind of not looking at them, and they're kind of sneaky they got my guy Vitinha as a beast, and yeah, they're good.
Well, what I think about too is just the expectations, right? You have Neymar, you have Messi on the team. If you don't win it all, it's a failure. Now, not to say that they don't have high expectations for themselves, but just from a kind of a global step back, we don't look at them quite the same when, I'd argue now that they have the best structured team that they've had in a long time.
Yeah, well, PSG, I mean, it's great that Messi and Neymar left in the sense that they need to focus on the home talent that they have in and around the Paris area. They did such a poor job of getting their academy stacked with all that talent in that area. Now with the refocus of developing talent, becoming a more balanced club, not a Galactico style squad, I think you will see them get better.
I think so
not
too.
This year though, but over time.
I think they've all of a sudden they've got some young players coming through that are like, oh hey, they might even be better. I mean, any new favorite teams or players watching the Champions League this month? I'll give mine. New favorite team has got to be RC Lens, mainly just because I like to say Lens.
And great jerseys, though. Great jerseys.
And then one of my favorite players from that team, Elie Wahi, who Arsenal was looking at there for a hot minute, and he's had some great goals in October, and he's a great player. I mean, they've never been in the Champions League, and like, I don't think they may not make it out of all this, but that Lens Arsenal game was pretty killer. I mean, that atmosphere was incredible.
That was incredible. I mean, it was better than Sevilla's, which is hard to say because they're used to getting up for it. Yeah, absolutely.
They'll bite your ear off over there. Yeah.
More than that.
Yeah.
All right, for me, favorite new team. So new team is a team I haven't supported or watched all that much. I guess for me it would be I kind of like Galatasaray.
Yeah.
Shout out to they're sitting they're second in Group A, I think. Don't quote me. I think it's second, but they beat Man United at home. And they're great because you turn on the TV to watch Champions League, Galatasaray's on, and anytime you have the question in your head, where the hell did that guy go? He's on Galatasaray.
That's right.
I mean, look at the people scoring the goals. It's like, oh, Zaha's there. Oh, that's great.
It's called the
I didn't know he went there.
Wesley Sneijder syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And you have Mauro Icardi, who can't take normal. He can't take a normal penalty, but he's awesome.
That's right.
He's all right. But that's for me.
And then did a Panenka, right? Yeah.
Oh, you did. Absolutely. Yeah. Of course you did.
The spoon.
Yeah. God. And I guess the player that I'd spotlight, I think we spoke about him on this pod a little bit in the beginning, but Santiago Jimenez on Feyenoord. And this is hard for me to do because I'm not supposed to give a lot of support to Feyenoord, but that team is fun to watch as well for those of you who are neutral. They're playing a great style. They play really well at home. But anyway, about Santi Jimenez, he's 22 years old, thereabouts. Signed a couple years ago from Cruz Azul in Mexico. He's got citizenship in, I believe it's Italy and in Mexico. He plays for Mexico. Mm-hmm. But he just cannot stop scoring. He's got 10 appearances, 13 goals, 3 assists. He's got a really cool girlfriend who goes to all the games at home incognito, dressed up in a costume. She hangs out with the ultras. She's like your ultimate cool, football wag or soccer girlfriend. That's the standard that should be had, right? And he's just playing on a great fun team. So I've really enjoyed watching him be on the highest stage for now because he's gonna end up getting sold in January.
Yeah, the hat trick, and all the fans were wearing sombreros. It was awesome. Yeah. No, Feyenoord looks awesome. They were one of my favorites. Also had the Celtic as one is, or the Japanese Celtic as I've come to call him. But I'm all about it. I just got a Maeda jersey for Hashi. He's killing it. What do you got?
There you go.
Yeah.
So the two I had penciled in were Celtic and Young Boys. young boys going up against City. Just the stature. I mean, they're not gonna win that game most days, but they have a winger named Elia. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's a young guy, and he said before the Man City game that it was his dream to play against the best club in the world. And I just think, I now think City is looked about that by kind of younger players. And then the other one that you touched on, Matt, for me was Japanese U or whatever, however you want to describe them. I found out that they started that kind of that influx of players because when Big Ange was there, that untapped market in kind of the Asian American countries, most of them came from like what we would qualify as like college teams. Mm-hmm. So like their equivalent in Japan, university teams. That's how a lot of them are kind of getting fed into that system. And I just think that aspect is really cool because you just don't hear a lot about that. So
this is how we have Matoma in Brighton.
That's right.
100%.
Same idea.
Same exact idea. So those are the teams and the the player that I kind of looked at a little bit more intently.
They've been really fun to watch. Yeah. And so jumping to the Europa League, going into the deep cuts of all deep cuts. So just, again, having a ball watching the Europa League. And, I mean, so many goals, so many crazy cultures, and intense fans. But it's funny, like, these teams, it's like, this team is called the Epic of Gilgamesh from the land of Zelda, or like they're from Stankonia, but like anyone have any new Europa teams that they've kind of gotten behind? And I'll give mine has been Aris Limassol from Cyprus. That's been kind of my new jam. Anyone have any off deep cut favorites?
Well, because my heart's been broken watching Ajax in the Europa League, I've had or traditionally I've had to find some other teams to watch, and I meant Arsenal, not Ajax. Arsenal in the Europa League until recently, but Braga. I've got no skin in the game with Braga, but seeing their home pitch, that is the coolest pitch I have ever seen. It's like something out of Lord of the Rings.
It is.
And I'm like, this is my team now. So for those of you who don't know, just Google Braga pitch and you'll see what we're talking about.
From Narnia or something.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, they carved the pitch into the side of a cliff. Like it's like
I know.
I mean, it's like really chiseled, and it's won like architecture awards and stuff. It's cool.
It's yet another reason to go to Portugal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for real. So I Champions League, I went off the beaten path. I'm gonna stay kind of on the boat here and go Leverkusen. So Florian Wirtz, he's going to be somewhere, right? I mean, he is just cooking. Every time I watch him, he is so smooth with the ball. They have a Grimaldo who scored 2 recently. That's my favorite to win it. I touched upon them earlier in the show, but I think that'll be a trophy that they have every intention of bringing home.
Yeah, Spencer, it was time to talk about Ajax.
Don't make me do it.
So no, we'll skip over everything being leading back to Overmars's pictures of his undercarriage, but
yes.
But what's going on? I mean, what is going on?
Well, it's important. Unfortunately, this all can be tied back to a series of undercarriage photos that were leaked.
Sure.
By Mark Overmars to some female employees.
Great,
he was
right mid, not great executive.
No, he was the best
right mid of all time. Yeah.
Best football mind in Europe in terms of recruitment. So he had been given power slowly over time, so that he was the principal architect of that team that started in 2017 and grew to the Champions League semifinals in 2019. So he was mixing all those good young players like De Ligt, De Jong, but with older players like Tadic and middle-aged players like Klaassen, right? When he left, essentially they struggled with recruitment, and to replace him as an executive, and ended up hiring somebody named Sven Mislintat of Dortmund and Arsenal and Stuttgart fame. They got their transfers horribly wrong. They poorly spent, and essentially right now they have invested heavily in young players that were not scouted properly for the Ajax system, so that now you have a young team with no senior leadership, They've spent a lot of the money that they should have consolidated to become the Bayern of the Netherlands, meaning you win this title every year and you just stomp on your opponents by buying their best players. They haven't done that. They mismanaged the money, and they've allowed Feyenoord, AZ, and PSV to sort of continue strengthening. And now Ajax, despite their money and despite their sort of pedigree, they don't have the team mentality to go through a relegation scrap. It's a much different mentality. This team was built to win this year. This was supposed to be at most a Tussenjahr, which means gap year for one rebuilding year. We're looking at a 5-6 year range now. Mm-hmm. And it's really sad to see, because I don't see them being able to attract, older talent, expensive talent to come to the Netherlands. But the result of that also is they can't keep the young players in their academy, and they're going elsewhere. So now you've got the academy players from young Ajax. Some of them are playing in the senior team. The academy is also in last place, and that's never happened before either, as far as I can remember. So it's really a crisis mode for the Ajax sort of collective.
We actually just did an episode a bit this morning on where I did top 10 academies in the world, and you'd be proud. Mm-hmm. I won't spoil it, but they were high on the.
Yes,
obviously, because they are the gold standard. I mean, they are the original, in my opinion, of what an academy should be, and the rest of the world has just kind of adopted that mentality. But Zach, did you have something?
Yeah, what I was going to say is, I just wonder the domino effect. Like, I know they're in the relegation zone right now, and hopefully they can battle through that. I just think of what it could do to Dutch football as a whole. Right, like you have a team of that stature for that league going down. I don't know how the money, obviously will all be allocated the same and what have you. But I'm curious to see, and I truthfully, I have one of my best friends is Dutch. He's a huge Ajax guy. He's a character, as you can imagine. But
he loves gold.
Yeah, that's it. But I wonder what it would do to the league as a whole. I have a sneaky suspicion that if you asked all the managers, all the club executives of all the Dutch teams, I have a sneaky suspicion that none of them would actually want Ajax to be relegated.
No, it's all these people know that Ajax is the face of Dutch soccer. They are traditionally, the face globally of that brand. Them being relegated would be, almost like something like PSG or Lyon getting relegated, which is a possibility this year, by the way. Lyon is terrible. But yeah, in terms of the prestige, but also the coefficient that's required to keep the Champions League and Europa League spots up, you need a team like Ajax up there in those spots to continue to attract to Eredivisie. It's just they're all better for having Ajax up there. And Ajax would say the same thing about PSV and Feyenoord, reluctantly. But yeah, it's better to have those top three, historic squads doing well and attracting talent and selling on to bigger clubs to create the model.
Yeah, well, we kind of talked about two of the OG brands globally, Man U and Ajax. Kind of, it's people that their opposite fans aren't exactly lamenting it, but at the same time, I mean, sport's better when they're around and doing well, and contending, and so we'll follow those as they turn the aircraft carrier around, which it seems like it's going to be, but almost wrapping up here, but kind of changing over to Michael Bradley, retired. Just want to give him his credit where credit's due. I feel like he kind of took a couple beatings there towards the end of his career, reputation-wise, as being kind of a, maybe too much of an alpha in the locker room. But I just want to say, I mean, what a legend. I mean, honestly, I think he's up there for me. And, we talked a lot about, McKinney and Weah and Reyna and these guys. I mean, none of those guys are where they are without Michael Bradley. I mean, he went to Roma and he did well there, and he's got a lot of memorable moments. Probably one of my all-time favorites is that 40-yarder in the Azteca Stadium against Mexico. And I mean,
2017, yeah.
Talk about a bulldog you want in the foxhole with you, and just what is an American player that you want and are proud to represent us. I think it was definitely him, and I mean he did a lot to further the game. You guys have any thoughts, or where does he rank amongst your all-time Americans for you guys?
For me, he's probably third. I still have like Dempsey as my
Sure.
all-time favorite,
Yeah.
but I mean his contribution can't be, you can't be ignored. I know he's got a lot of haters out there, like, there's a lot of people that are very critical of him and his
Hmm.
role as center mid.
Hmm.
But I don't share those. I think his contribution to the U.S. game has been amazing, and I enjoyed watching him and enjoyed what he contributed.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So, let me see. How do I say this? An extremely important player. He really opened up, American soccer and the avenues, that kind of came from that. I'm probably on the lower end of the spectrum as far as not the respect that he deserves, because it's high. As far as upper echelon of talent, he was kind of that guy for me that we had no other player that could play his role, but I don't always think he did it well. I might have seen him pass 10 progressive passes in his career. That's obviously an exaggeration. That's an exaggeration. I don't want to get too much hate. I kind of frame it to like Bill Russell is, and I'm not calling him Bill Russell, but Bill Russell is so important to basketball in general. But if you put, Bill Russell on the Celtics, or, pick a team in the NBA in the current format, I don't think he's looked at as the same player. I was trying to steer the ship in here to not completely, crap on him in his retirement. A very good player, a very important player for the progression of American soccer, and famous dad and all that stuff. So I'm happy to see him, kind of get his flowers in his retirement, and he did open up many channels and many avenues for future American stars.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like all these. It's like bands, or like, like, all right, for example, this is going to get weird, but like, all right, like the Beatles, for example. Am I comparing Michael Bradley to the Beatles? Hell no, of course not. But there's a synergy here where sometimes people are like, well, I don't really like the Beatles, or I'm like, but you got to understand, everything that you listen to would not exist without them.
Spot on.
So like, or people like, I like Rolling Stones better. I love the Rolling Stones, by the way, too. But they were just a bluesier version of the Beatles at that time. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying about everyone deserves, it's all about context and where they fall into the history. And like, we've had a lot of guests on here and friends and former teammates of mine that were like, when we were like 14, 15, there was not even MLS. Like, it was like you were just doing it to do it. It was like following the Grateful Dead. There was nothing. Like, Roy Wegerle was the only one anyone had ever heard of that played professional sports, and he wasn't even really technically American. And so Michael Bradley wasn't like the first, but he was like in the second or third class behind it. And it was sort of like, I guess an image comes to mind with him of like, being like getting on a bus full of players and them saying, you go on the baseball bus, and he's like, no, move the hell over, I'm sitting here. And like, he kind of was like, I mean, I think he was the first player in the Serie A that like did anything, that actually, and he wasn't there long, but like, I just think he was he played a pretty pivotal role. And like, in that time, like, to your point, like, so would Bill Russell, would he do well? Would he play against Wembanyama and LeBron and KD? No. But at that time, he was like absolutely groundbreaking. And I'm not saying Michael Bradley was groundbreaking, but I am saying that he isn't Gio Reyna, but without Michael Bradley, there is no Gio Reyna. And like, he was kind of a hard-nosed, not a lot of flair, but like, that's kind of what we needed at that time. So he was sort of the center mid that we needed.
I kind of frame it as like mentality. Mm-hmm. Like that is one, I think, is like one redeeming quality, is just the mentality of inspiring the players around him. I got your back kind of thing. We can pick apart the nuances of his game. Sure, you can do that with any player. But as far as mentality, towards the American, U.S. men's national team and just kind of going forward, I think you nailed the. You did it perfectly. A very necessary and important player to American soccer.
He kind of ushered in the whole like an academy player going straight to MLS. Like he was like one of the first to really do that. And now that's like, oh, that's what you do. But he was like, oh, this guy's doing this? Is this guy going to be like working at Subway soon? Like, but like he kind of showed like, no, you can be a professional at 16, 17. Like he was playing for New York Metro Stars, which is even no longer in existence, as like a 16, 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
And then he goes over to Holland, though. He went over to Erenveen, too, which is like, and that really showed you that an American player could play in Europe successfully. And that was like one of the first ones I can remember. So.
And then he came back and did like his thing in the MLS for a long time, like kind of like helped advance that league. Anyway, Michael Bradley, hell of a career, and thank you for all that you did. And we got a couple more things, but then we got to wrap up quickly here. But we got to talk about the handballs and the EPL. And I know, Spencer, you're going to... but like, so just a discussion topic, and I don't really know where I'll land on this, but I just think it's interesting. I know where you land, Spencer. It's just that like, there were so many of them lately, and it's kind of... I just think it's funny where it's turned from, was it a handball to, was it a handball with intent? I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I just think it merits discussion in that it's become like, oh, but it was a handball, but did they mean it or did it block the goal? The block the goal I get, but the mean it, it's kind of like, well, that's not really the rule. Like if you handball, you handball. Anyway, I don't know. What do you think, Spencer?
I think that it's the rule as written is written by people who never played the game, right? I think that if anybody, and you just have to see the penalty called against Saliba recently for jumping in the air. I mean, he is leaping for a ball in the box. He is right next to an attacking player. His arm is slightly moved from his side, but he's jumping in the air. That's what happens when you jump. You use your hands. And he gets called for that. Then it's not called again for the same exact scenario that should be called handball is not called from week to week. So what I would say is the rule needs to be examined because it's hard to enforce in the modern game because you obviously want your defenders not to be stumps and have arms, right? Also, the consistent application, ideally, right? But the consistent application of the rules is week to week, and this is across a lot of
multiple
refereeing decisions. And it's just bad, and I don't think VAR is there to spot a small handball and change the face of the game. It's meant to be a situation where you deliberately handle the ball and it affects the outcome. That is a handball to me, not inadvertent hitting of a player's hand while jumping. The unnatural position. I don't want to hear what unnatural means. Like jumping, obviously raising your hands up above your head and blocking a ball, that is handball too. But I'm just so sick of having to talk about it. Sorry.
No, it's just been so prevalent lately that it's been crazy. You have any thoughts?
Spence, you crushed it. There's too much nuance in the rule. I shouldn't be able to see
interpretation.
Yes, I shouldn't be able to see 5 identical, or close to identical, handball plays that happen. 3 of them get called, 2 of them don't. There has to be. I think they, in the effort to get it perfect, I feel like they have messed it up. The system. This is kind of overarching to VAR and everything else. Which this is just a side tangent. I've always thought that offside should be dictated on the feet. If your feet are before the defender, that should be the line. If I'm leaning over, it's like out of bounds, right? Like the line is the line. It should be dictated on the feet anywhere.
Not
anyway.
like a flicker of your hairs off. You're off.
Yeah, and maybe that's like just kind of this overarching thing of in an effort to get it perfect, 100% correct, they have kind of made a mess of it. Hopefully. I mean, you never know. You see a play happens, it's a coin flip. Does it get called? Does it not? If it's the side, if it affects your side and, you feel like you get screwed or the other team feels like they, deserve one. There's too much nuance, too much interpretation. We have to get some more black and white rules in there to really, kind of firm that up.
Yeah, because like one ref in England will be like, well, if it hit his pinky fingernail, PK. But then in another league, it's like, well, there's all this like context and like nuance and like well, he had a bad upbringing, so that's fine. Like, you know, I mean, it's just a lot of
Too much interpretation for sure.
yeah. Well, I want to
What makes the Saliba one so frustrating? Not just because I'm an Arsenal fan, but it's against Chelsea. Mudryk headed the ball onto Saliba's hand, like when they're both going for the ball, and that's a handball penalty. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sorry. If that had, go ahead.
by that line of thinking, you could just literally start shooting it at people's hands, and then
Which is a thing.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the kind of stuff that you lose fans over, actually. I mean, you know, but all right, last two questions before we break, and this has been awesome, guys. Who's your favorite striker in the world right now? Spencer, I think you already said yours, but you can say it again if you want.
Santiago Jimenez is not my favorite striker in the world right now. He's the one that I would like to draw attention to. And if you're looking for someone to watch him. He's fantastic.
Yep. What about you?
The homer answer is Holland, obviously, but you know, I'd say Harry Kane. He's hit the ground running. It seems like he's evaporated Lewandowski's thoughts at Bayern just seemingly overnight. You know, I feel like everyone's forgot what he's done there. But Harry Kane is he's hitting the ground running, and it's one of the reasons why I think they got a shot to go all the way this year.
Well, it speaks to how good Harry Kane is because it's just like, well, he's supposed to score a goal every game. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, but mine is Lautaro.
Yep.
Just, I mean, he's gotten even better since the World Cup. I mean, so some interesting stats on him: 32 goals this calendar year. I mean, that's
that many?
Yeah, I was like, damn. And
wow.
And a lot of his goals are big goals. Like, it's not just goals; it's like goals in the Champions League's quarters and semis, clutch penalty against Holland in the World Cup.
Thanks.
Right. 10 goals in 8 matches so far in the Serie A. He had that 4-goal game when he came in like the 60th minute. That was crazy. So anyway, that's mine. Okay, so and then last one before we break, guys, is let's name our perfect 11 right now for favorite players right now. Who's ready to start us off?
11 for the Premier League or 11 just in
all
general?
over the world. If you could create your perfect 11 right now.
Oh my gosh!
I can start.
Go ahead.
I'll start, and you jot. Okay. All right, I'm gonna start off. All right. In goal, I'm gonna go Yassine Bano because my sons Jack and Henry love him, so I had to do him. He's in the Saudi league now. Morocco, came from Sevilla. Theo Hernandez, left back from AC Milan, France, Atletico Madrid Academy. Achraf Hakimi from PSG, Morocco, Real Madrid Academy. Alphonso Davies, Bayern Munich, Canada, of course, Toronto FC Academy, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys seen that Real Madrid is starting to sniff around at him a little bit, I think that'd be a pretty killer spot, but I'm not really sure you can upgrade much from where he is now. So I'm going to go 5 in the middle. I'm going to go Griezmann. He's really seemed to be recaptured his form. Atletico Madrid, France. Got to go Odegaard, Arsenal, Norway, Real Madrid Academy. Bellingham, I mean, how can you not? Real Madrid, England, Dortmund, by way of Dortmund. Julian Alvarez, Man City, Argentina, River Plate Academy. And then I'm going to go Paqueta, actually, from West Ham, Brazil.
He made it, huh?
Yeah, he's killing it, man. Flamengo Academy. Then I'm going to go up top. I'm going to go Lautaro, Inter, Argentina Racing Club Academy, and Messi, Inter Miami, Barcelona. Who you got, Zach?
It's hard for me to argue with that, to be honest. Let me try to do off the top of my head. I'll do a Premier League 11 for this year so far. Okay. So sort of building on you, I'll do who I would put if the league ended today. Goalkeeper, Sam Johnston, Crystal Palace.
Nice.
Most clean sheets in the league so far. I think he's a guy, if you don't know anything about Crystal Palace, there's no reason for you to, but he's been really good. So, right back, I would probably put Trippier or Ben White. Mm-hmm. Left back, I hate to do this, but Udogie, Tottenham, he's doing really well. Mm-hmm. Fun to watch. Good young player. Center back, I would do Saliba. Mm-hmm. Center mids, I'll do James Maddison. obviously Declan Rice,
Yeah.
but you could easily switch out James Ward-Prowse or Odegaard in there because they're all four of those guys are absolutely awesome. Right wing, Saka and Salah. One of those two. I think they're the gold standard. Striker, not Haaland. I'm going to put Ollie Watkins there. I think Ollie Watkins is the guy to watch. I think he's not better than Haaland, but right now I think I would put him into that team because he's more fun to watch. And I'm trying to throw a little shade on Zach anyway. Yeah. And then the left wing, I would put Martinelli just because he's my guy, but also fully recognizing that Son probably should be there ahead of him.
No, Martinelli.
That's my off the cuff 11.
That's really good. And no, those are good ones. Martinelli's, he's doing. I'm really impressed with him lately.
So does that mean I have to take Odegaard out of mine? Is that how that works?
Yeah.
No, I got to take him out.
Not
now?
at all.
Let's see. Let's start at the top. I'm going to go a front three of Haaland, Kane, and Son.
Nice.
Man, that'd be hell to play against.
Yeah, that would be horrible.
That sounds like a actual nightmare. Let's go for a center mid three of Jude Bellingham. Let's go Gavi. He put in a performance at El Clasico. He's been playing well all season. And then let's go Gundogan. Let's let him round out my center mid trio. In the back, I'm gonna go Guardiola out on the left. I'm gonna go. Let's go Ruben Diaz and a lot of City players. Sorry, everybody.
Where's Rodri? Where is Rodri in this? He's the best in the world.
So Rodri is the one. I wanted to put Gavi in there just because I gave him a little shout in earlier pod, trying to make me sound smarter. To me, I honestly put him as the most undroppable City player. I think he's more important than Haaland. I think he's more important than Julian Alvarez. So yeah, it totally could plug and play in there.
Silva's a contender too, though.
He's just one of my favorite players of all time at this point. I mean, he can do everything at such a particular package of a man. And man, he is immense. He's well beyond his size.
Shout out to short guys doing good things.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like we're all in that camp on the show, which is great. So let's see. I need a center back and a right back. Let's go center back. Let's go. I had Saliba or Saliba on there rather. Let's stick with Saliba. I think he's going to be immense for years to come too. And then what am I missing? Just a right back. Right back. Let's go Ben White. And just round it out.
There you go.
Give a little Arsenal shout in there. So that is my off the cuff 11 myself.
I'm shocked that nobody chose any of those French midfielders to be in the starting 11. I think those guys. Maybe not just yet, but maybe next year at this time, that midfield is going to be all French.
Yeah, Camavinga, Tchouaméni was definitely hard, but I couldn't. But Griezmann's just a favorite of mine, and he's been playing so well lately.
Yeah,
obviously Bellingham, and then Odegaard. I just think, and I don't know. But that's the thing is they're like all these other guys. They're like the 9 or 10s on their teams, but France is just a constant 8.75 across the board. Like they're all like they're basically the second best player on every best team in the world. You know,
their B team could probably finish like top 5, top like very high World Cup. Like France and France B, it would be a detriment to play France B.
They don't
absolutely
drop below an 8.5 of the 10. Like you know what I mean? Like whereas even Argentina or some of these countries, they're like, maybe there's some guys that are like, okay, well, you start getting into certain positions, like, okay, they're not like the superstar, but France just, God, they're just chock-a-block full. All right, guys, well, wrapping up, this has been Center Mid Philosopher with the Mashy Pea Mob. Again, remember to like, comment, subscribe, check out the store, check out our brand, Augustus Royale Fashion, and thank you to Spencer and Zach for crushing it. And Caleb and Matt, we miss you. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you in person next time.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Later, everybody.
See you, bud.